This is Greg Locke, a pastor who is diving headfirst into deliverance ministry. If you're unfamiliar, it means exorcism. He's exorcising demons from his audience for real. Absolutely unhinged. Well, his ministry wasn't always like this. They historically were Baptist, and Baptists don't really do this kind of thing, not to this degree. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Greg Locke's history of kind of changing over from a traditionally Baptist organization to whatever he is now. Take a look at this next clip. This came out mid-March 2023, and this is people at his church discussing the exorcism stuff that they're doing now, deliverance ministry.
The work that's coming out of this art class is beyond anything that I did when I was in art. And then down at the bottom, I mean, come on, Mark 16:17. I mean,
Mark 16:17, remember that.
They're going to cast out demons down there. These kids are learning things that I didn't learn. These kids are going to be the first generation to graduate that know how to cast out devils. Come on now. I mean, this is so beautiful. So we had to represent that. And when we looked that up.
So the verse that they mentioned a minute ago, Mark 16, verse 17, it's interesting they brought that up. Every time these exorcism people come out of the woodwork, it's always Mark 16:17 that they quote. So let's just talk about that verse real quick. Just take a second. Let's look it up. Mark 16:17. Is deliverance ministry real? Should people be exorcising demons from others? This is the chapter that they were talking about here, Mark 16. Now let me tell you a little something about the Gospels. Mark was the first gospel book written. If you're kind of new to the Bible, if you're not like super experienced with it, if you're not even a Christian or whatever, let me just start from the beginning. Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John were written roughly in that order, and they're all four accounts of the exact same thing. So Mark was written first, and it details Jesus's life from being a young boy to modern day, or to the day he died, like 30-something or other, right? But there's a big gap between age 18 and like age 30-something or other, I believe. So it details his whole life there, or most of his life anyways. But the writers of Matthew and Luke felt like they could add something to it, even though they weren't there, even though they were using Mark as a source to do the writings that they were doing. They decided to add their, throw their hat in the ring or whatever. So Matthew and Luke are honestly completely unnecessary. You want to read the Gospel of Jesus, the New Testament, you should really be reading Mark and Mark alone. In fact, there are even fake stories in John, the book of John. You know that story about he who's without sin should cast the first stone or whatever it is? That's fake. That story never happened. Jesus never did that, okay? That was added later, hundreds of years down the line. You know that verse in John 1:1 where it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God"? Again, fake. That's fake. The writer of John wrote this hundreds of years after Jesus was gone. I think, what year was John written? Okay, so the belief is that it was between 90 and 100 CE, Common Era. So, I don't know, 60 years after Jesus was gone, the book of John was written. It was not written contemporaneously. It was not written while Jesus was on earth. And the writer of the book of John believed that Jesus was God. Now, Jesus didn't believe he was God. The writer of Mark and Matthew and Luke didn't believe that Jesus was God. But John comes along, sees the other Gospels that were already written, Mark being the first one, the one that he used as a source. He saw Luke and Matthew and said, you know what, I'm going to add a little bit to this. Let's throw in a story about Jesus being forgiving. And they told that story about he being without sin should cast the first stone. Then they said, you know what, I think Jesus was actually God. Let's just add that in. That's really how this whole thing came about. Now, Mark 16, let me tell you the story here. Jesus is crucified. He's killed, and that threw a wrench into everything. Nobody understood how that could have happened, because if he were the Messiah, if he were the Son of Man like expected, he couldn't have died. If he dies, it means he's not the Messiah. He had to fulfill certain qualifications to be the Son of Man, and if he dies, it means he can't fulfill those qualifications. So Jesus dies, and his apostles come up with an explanation. They say, hey, you know what? He'll be back. He'll be back any 5 minutes now. They believed he'd be here in their lifetime. To be the Son of Man, Jesus had to have taken political power in Israel, had to have been like the king of the Jews, and then spark Armageddon into being. None of that happened. He died. So everyone was confused. So they write this story here in Mark explaining the chain of events and claimed that he was resurrected afterward. After he died, he did come back to life. So here's how the book of Mark really ends. Okay? These last verses, 9 to 19, are fake. They were added hundreds of years later by monks. They don't belong in here. In fact, in many Bibles, they're not even in there anymore. They were removed. In some, they have parentheses, and it says, the earliest manuscripts and some other ancient witnesses do not have verses 9 to 20. They're fake. They're fake verses. So just read the last, couple verses that finish the book of Mark off. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they could go anoint Jesus' body. Very early on the first day of the week, this is after he's already in the tomb, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb. They asked each other, who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb? But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. Don't be alarmed, he said. You're looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who was crucified. He is risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go tell his disciples and Peter, he's going ahead of you into Galilee. You will see him just as he told you. And here's the last verse of the book of Mark. Trembling and bewildered, the women went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. The end. That's how the book of Mark really ended. Now, anything that you read about the ending past that in the book of Mark is fake. Anything you read about past that in the book of Matthew or Luke or John are fake. Those Gospels, Matthew, Luke, and John, were based on Mark. They used Mark as a source. Nobody in those books knew any more about what happened after this point than Mark did, and he didn't expand upon it. So they quoted Mark chapter 16, verse 17. Let's see what these monks added. Let's see what idea they wanted you to have about whatever, about Christianity, hundreds of years after Jesus had already died. The story continues. When Jesus rose early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had driven 7 demons. Okay, that's interesting. She went and told those who had been with him and who were mourning and weeping. When they heard that Jesus was alive and that she had seen him, they did not believe it. Now, think about the personality type that Jesus has up to this point, okay? Leading up to this, all through the book of Mark and in the other Gospels, Jesus was a peace-loving, kind, nice guy that was all about love and happiness, coming together, building bridges, not hating your enemy, loving your enemy as yourself, the whole 9 yards. It wasn't about hate or anger or righteous indignation or any of that, right? Keep reading. This is verse 12. Afterward, Jesus appeared in a different form to 2 of them while they were walking in the country. These returned and reported it to the rest, but they did not believe them either. Later, Jesus appeared to the 11 as they were eating. He rebuked them for their lack of faith and their stubborn refusal to believe those who had seen him after he had risen. Did he rebuke doubting Thomas? Did he shame him or scream at him or treat him like a bag because he wanted to touch his wounds to prove that he was real or whatever? No, Jesus apparently treats you like garbage if you need some proof. Only in this set of verses, though. Only here. So he rebukes them. That, by the way, you ever heard anybody say, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus? Those Pentecostal or those evangelical nutcases that do that kind of thing? That's from this verse right here. He said to them, go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. Now, there are other verses that suggest you should be spreading the word, but this verse right here is really the basis for basically all of it. You know, all of the evangelism efforts, missionaries and door knocking with Jehovah's Witnesses. Like I said, they have a couple other little verses, but this is the one that really kicked the idea into gear for a lot of people. And they retroactively went back and looked for other examples in the Bible that would fortify their belief that they should be spreading the message, like Matthew 24:14. That verse, for the record, says, gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all the nations, and then the end will come. So this set of verses right here, 15 to 18, are the basis for the whole Protestant and Pentecostal revolutions in the United States. You should be knocking on doors and forcing your beliefs down people's throats. That's verse 15. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved, but whoever does not believe will be condemned. That's the idea of being born again. And these signs will accompany those who believe. In my name they will drive out demons. Exorcisms, deliverance ministry. They will speak in new tongues. They will pick up snakes with their hands, and when they drink deadly poison, it will not hurt them at all. Remember, this is all fake. These are fake verses added after the fact. And by the way, that's the verse that Greg Locke's church quotes as evidence that they should be, performing exorcisms on people. Greg Locke's belief in this whole exorcism thing is unbiblical. It is outside of what Jesus taught. They will pick up snakes with their hands and they will drink deadly poison. It will not hurt them at all. They will place their hands on sick people and they will get well. Faith healing. This little section right here that was added by monks later, verses 15 to 18, is the basis for so much damage in society. It's incalculable. Just these few sentences right here are responsible for an absolutely absurd amount of societal damage. It set people up to fall victim to scammers and grifters and charlatans across the spectrum. So anyways, she just quoted Mark 16, verse 17. It's a fake verse. They built their whole ministry on falsehood. Kind of ironic.
Learning things that I didn't learn. These kids are going to be the first generation to graduate that know how to cast out devils. Come on now. I mean, this is so beautiful. So we had to represent that. And when we looked that up, I mean, it just blew me away because we had to represent that.
Okay, I don't even know what we're looking at here, like what these little emblems or images are or whatever. I think that this is what we're looking at. This is the art contest that they did. This is the art they drew. Global Vision Academy 2022. Just nuts, dude. Absolutely nuts. You think that's nuts? Oh, we haven't even gotten on the train yet. Check this one out. 2023. This guy on the left here is Daniel Adams, okay? And he's an ex-MMA fighter. That'll be relevant in a second. He's also a preacher at Greg Locke's church. He has his own church, too, I think, that he does his own preaching at. But just watch. Just watch this. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second. It gets crazy. He's about to perform an exorcism on this girl. Demons cowering in fear, it says.
Don't worry about it. Leave it. Hey.
So he just stared her in the eyes. I don't know if you guys knew this, but staring somebody in the eyes like that causes weird reactions anyways. And I'm not even convinced that this isn't just her acting.
Hey, come here, Dad. Hey, I bind you in Jesus' name. Get over here. To your knees.
Oh, no!
This is painful, dude. This is just painful. Oh, my God. Was this part of their PR, their propaganda to try to get people to come to this church and believe that they really are exorcising demons? It says, to your knees.
Oh, no!
To your knees. Stay there.
This is just bad, man. Is she acting, or does she really believe that she's possessed by a demon? You guys got to tell me in the comments, which is it? Is she a true believer?
Stay there. Stand back up.
I'm sorry.
Stand back up.
I want to hit you.
Then come on.
Ah!
Again, he was an MMA fighter. He's not afraid of taking a punch, especially not from somebody that's like way smaller than him.
Ah! I promise I'll get you and your family and all these people. I'm gonna kill them and kill you. I'm gonna hurt you. I can't. Ah!
This is bad, dude. This is bad. Oh, it's so cringy. Oh my God, it's terrible. What do you feel when you cringe like this? Personally, it kind of varies between wanting to vomit from the cringe or just feeling my face implode in on itself because the cringe is so intense. This is causing both right now. It's bad. Just straight up bad. Quick reminder, don't forget to check out my website, owenmorgan.com. I would appreciate that very much. Just go to my website. When you go there, a little pop-up appears, says subscribe to my email list right here. Just give me your name, it's optional, and give me your email address, and you will get access to early, complete, some ad-free videos every single week. You can also check out the website itself for some of this stuff, like if you want access to ad-free videos or whatever, and it's an aggregator, so you can look at all videos released the week of February 26th. Just click that in the sidebar there. You can look at all of my main channel's videos. March 5th, the week of March 5th, it lists every video released for that week that's up here so far. So go to my website, sign up for my newsletter, and access early stuff that's ad-free. Pretty useful. So I want to talk a little bit about some of Greg Locke's stranger beliefs. If you've never heard of this guy, it doesn't stop at deliverance ministry. It doesn't stop at exorcisms. Listen to some of the other odd stuff he's had to say recently. February 26, 2023. Check this one out.
And we fostered this atmosphere where people say things like this. Well, I want to go to a church that celebrates me. We got them celebratory churches all over this town.
Okay, I've never heard anybody say that before, but I can understand somebody wanting to go to a church that doesn't hate them for who they are, that recognizes that they're one of God's creations, just like everything and everybody else, and appreciates them exactly as they are and doesn't try to change them. I mean, to some degree, you're expected to keep up a certain moral standard as a Christian. I get that. But being gay is not part of that moral standard. In my opinion, the Bible is not actually anti-gay. The Old Testament, there are a couple of verses that are arguably a little bit anti-gay, but those verses don't even matter because Jesus fulfilled the old law, right? I mean, you could kind of go one way or another, but I'm comfortable saying, at least Jesus was not anti-gay. Go with that one. I don't see why that's a bad thing, wanting to go to a church that recognizes that. That's really the message here, right? I want to go to a church that celebrates me. What they're saying is I want to go to a church that doesn't hate me for who I am. Also, as if, churches don't put up with pastors committing adultery and all kinds of other stuff all the time anyways. Churches put up with an awful lot and turn a blind eye, totally ignore the fact that these members are doing this thing they're not supposed to or that thing or whatever. I mean, the Bible says you can drink, but drink in moderation, for example. How many people get drunk every night and go to a church and you just completely ignore it? But they have a problem with gay people. If you're gay, you're not allowed to go to that church. You're allowed to drink. You're allowed to drink yourself into a coma if you want. They don't care that much about that. But being gay, that's apparently crossing a line. Something that was only mentioned in a total of, I think, 2 or 3 verses in the New Testament, arguably not even talking about long-term gay relationships, like gay marriages or whatever, and certainly not mentioned by Jesus at all. But okay, let's keep listening here.
We got them celebratory churches all over this town. And I'm not against all the churches in this town.
Oh, yes, he is. Oh, they have such a problem with him and vice versa.
I walked in Dunkin' Donuts the other day, and one of the pastors in there. It's like one of them deals, when people leave the church and you see them in Walmart.
Okay, this is interesting. When someone leaves the church and you see him at Walmart, the fact that he's saying this in the first place implies that he knows that he causes an uncomfortable adversarial kind of feeling when somebody leaves the church. This is destructive influence.
They're like,
they wouldn't do that if he hadn't pressured them into feeling like they have to turn around and walk away the way that he's portraying here. He's talking about pastors. These people are presumably still men of God. They still believe this stuff, right? But they left his church behind. Why? If they're still men of God, then I take that to mean that they just think that his interpretation is wrong. And why would he think that somebody who's still very religious would walk away from him? Because they know he's going to make it an uncomfortable situation for them. You know, Greg Locke used to be somebody who just comes out here and repeats Republican talking points, and that's just his claim to fame. Like, he just says whatever the Republican Party is thinking in that moment, and suddenly he gets like 1 billion views. It used to be like that. Now, I think Greg Locke is a full-blown cult leader. A full-blown cult leader, really. His church has taken an extra step into extremism in the past 2 years, I would say. And he's laughing about it right now. He's laughing about the fact that people feel uncomfortable with talking to him if they want to leave the church. Not leave religion, leave his church. You know, I was in a guitar class back in high school. I went there every week for like a year or 2 years or something like that. And one day I was just done with it. You know, I felt like I'd learned enough and I walked away. Now, do you think that it was awkward for me seeing my guitar teacher in Walmart? Do you think that like when I saw him there, I hid my face? I tried to hide, in between the clothes, those round racks you got at a clothing shop, and if you just kind of climb under the clothes and stand in the middle of the rack, you're in your own little hidey hole or whatever. You think that I did that when I see my guitar teacher there, my ex-guitar teacher? No. I walk up to him, say hey, shake his hand, chat with him, ask how he's doing. Because guitar class is not a cult. It's not compulsory. I don't feel compelled to be a part of it. And when I leave, I'm not shamed for doing so. That's a key difference between a cult or an extremist group and a normal, run-of-the-mill, everyday, calm, loving, happy religion. It's control mechanisms that are built into it. That's what makes something a cult. Manipulation and control. And Greg Locke is showing us how people feel when they leave his church. Inadvertently, probably, showing us that he is a cult leader.
And one of the pastors in there, it's like one of them deals, when people leave the church and you see them in Walmart? They're like, so this guy's like, and I'm like, I see you.
So he's going to make it awkward for him.
My 2 cups. Hey, brother. How that church doing? But people say, well, yeah, I go to that church because they celebrate me. If you go to a church that celebrates you, you better get out. We celebrate Jesus up in this house. We celebrate miracles, signs, and wonders in this house.
As if these other churches don't, observe, Jesus or love or respect Jesus. Like, if they accept you as you are and don't try to impose control tactics on you, then they don't love Jesus. That's the subtle joke that that's the subtle message that he's trying to deliver here. You can either hate the people around you or you don't love Jesus. It's one of the two. We don't celebrate the churchgoers, we celebrate Jesus. A nice little succinct message that really delivers that point. Either hate the people that I hate or hate Jesus.
We celebrate Jesus up in this house. We celebrate miracles, signs, and wonders in this house. We celebrate the presence of the Father. We celebrate the Holy Bible. We celebrate the blood, the blood, the blood, the blood. We celebrate Jesus in this house. It's not my job to raise your kids. We celebrate Jesus in this house.
Not my job to raise your kids. What? Well, there's the go, go, go guy in the background. I think the dude's name's Patrick or something. And he's always yelling go, go, go in the background. He has like a YouTube channel where he's always talking about how great Greg Locke is. It's just weird, dude. I think he lives in a van on the property or something. That's what I heard. Don't quote me on that. Why? Why doesn't he yell, I love Jesus? Why doesn't he yell, go Greg Locke or something? Why does he yell, go, go, go? What does it even mean? I'm just baffled by this. It's an enigma.
A church that gets people with a hot dog smothered in onions will lose the members to the church down the road that orders Papa John's. What you get them with is what you keep them with.
Okay, what? A church that gets them with hot dogs smothered in onions. I don't understand. What's he talking about? A church hot dog smothered in onions? Somebody help me out here.
To the church down the road that orders Papa John's. What you get them with is what you keep them with. You didn't come here for Disneyland on Ice. You came here for Bible preaching.
I don't know what that means either, really.
These Disneyland, Six Flags over Jesus churches are everywhere.
I think what he's saying is if your church is loving and moderate and doesn't hate people for anything, you're doing it wrong. That's the message I'm picking up, right?
Come to our church, like a bunch of seals. Come to our church. We will celebrate you. Oh, you're not married? You want to live in sin? That's okay. We celebrate you. You can sing on the platform anytime you want to.
Okay, wow. Bizarre, dude. Why is he jumping up and down like this? And by the way, let me tell you something, okay? If you want to post a clip to like a website or Twitter or something, you know what? You put some hard work into that. It's actually hard doing that whole clipping thing. I do it. It takes a lot of time and energy. If you want to advertise your stuff, do it with a little watermark in the corner, not covering the entire screen, please. That drives me absolutely nuts.
You're not married? You want to live in sin? That's okay. We celebrate you. You can sing on the platform anytime.
Just absolutely nuts, dude. This guy is something else. Check this one out. February 26, 2023. It's the same day, just a minute or two later.
I just would rather go to a church where I feel comfortable. Okay, look, I like comfort to some degree. But let me tell you something. You ain't going to be comfortable when you die and go to hell. Because you had some limp-wristed, mamby-pamby preacher that wouldn't get up and tell you what the truth of the Word of God is. Oh, you want to live?
You see, if you don't hate people, then you're not really observing the Bible. You're not doing what the Bible instructs you to do. You must hate the people around you.
Oh, you want to live in your addiction? That's cute. Jesus celebrates you.
Okay, who is ultra religious and going to church every day and super invested in all of this and also addicted to drugs? I can't imagine that's terribly common, right? Like, a lot of drug addicts that I've met were super religious, like to have cross tattoos on them. Most of the prison population, a vast majority, is Christian. Only like 0.4% are atheist or something like that. Oh, you know, the prison populations, or the Christian prison population is only rivaled by the Muslim prison population, but that's neither here nor there. The point is, I think if somebody is like, you know, like a heroin addict, they're probably more concerned with doing heroin than going to church. I know from personal experience. I was there, but that's neither here nor there.
Oh, you full of a demon of lust?
Ooh, this is the exorcism thing, slightly veiled. Again, he thinks everything, every single ailment, every problem that you have, every struggle, you know, you're struggling with lust, or you're struggling with smoking, or you need blood pressure medicine, really. You have bipolar disorder, whatever. It's because you're possessed by a demon. And if you went to Greg Locke's church and he prayed over you, you would no longer be schizophrenic. You would no longer have bipolar disorder, or you wouldn't need the blood pressure medicine anymore if Greg Locke prayed over you. I am not joking. That is real. He really believes this. So he's talking about the demon of lust that's possessing somebody. If you feel an interest in somebody around you, it means you're possessed by a demon.
Oh, you full of a demon of lust? You look at pornography? God forbid I ever tell you not to take communion.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. So Greg Locke's saying he would tell somebody not to take communion. Isn't that like commanded by Jesus no matter what? Like, aren't you just supposed to observe the communion or whatever? Does a preacher even have the right to tell you not to take communion? I guess that would depend on your biblical interpretation.
Oh, sir, it's okay. You just take communion anytime you want to.
Well, not for nothing. That's what Jesus said, right? Am I misremembering?
Oh, I know. The last 3 weeks you've been sleeping on the couch. 2 o'clock in the morning with your beautiful wife over laying in the bed. You mount pornography on the couch.
Uh-oh. Okay. We're going off the rails now. Okay. You think that if, the other way was an option, that somebody would even be doing that? Seems to me like they're sleeping on the couch, not because they like how the couch feels better than the bed, but because they have a problem with their wife, or vice versa. Maybe their wife has a problem with them. Maybe it's not their fault. You ever knock that one around the noggin? This is crazy, dude. Okay. Wow, he's condemning people for this.
You mount pornography on the couch. Then roll up in here. Oh, I think I want to take communion because if I don't, what will people think?
Wow, dude. Just wow. This guy is something else. Seriously, his beliefs and ideas and views and theology are all so backwards and disconnected from what the Bible actually says. Look, I'm an atheist. Okay, I don't believe any of this stuff. But if there's one thing that I've dedicated my life to understanding, it is the Bible and why people believe the things that they believe. And I just so happen to know that everything that Greg Locke bases his religious belief on, his theology, is built on sand. He's built his entire church off of Mark chapter 16, verses 15 to 18. Next thing you know, the dude will be bringing in snakes to pass around to everybody. That would be an interesting one to see, for sure. Anyway, let me know what you think about it in the comments. I think this dude is just something else.